Welcome back or welcome to my YouTube channel. Basically on this channel we do vlogs, get ready with me's, regular videos, and sometimes we explore history. Today's video we're doing the life and illustrious death of Her Majesty Queen Victoria. So like, comment and follow, and let's get into the video, my darling. Victoria's father was Prince Edward, Duke of Kent and Strathern, the fourth son of King George III and Queen Charlotte. Until 1817, King George's only legitimate grandchild was Edward's niece, the Princess Charlotte of Wales, the daughter of George, Prince Regent, who would become King George IV. Charlotte's death in 1817 precipitated a succession crisis that brought pressure on Edward and his unmarried brothers to marry and have children. In 1818, the Duke of Kent married Princess Victoria of Saxe-Coburg and Saalfeld, a widowed German princess with two children, Karl and Theodora, by her first marriage to Emmet Karl, the second Prince of Liechtenstein. Her brother Leopold was Charlotte's widow, and late 4:15 a.m. on Monday the 24th of May 1819 at Kensington Palace in London, and was the Duke and Duchess of Kent's only child. Victoria was christened privately by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Charles Manners Sutton, on the 24th of June in Cupola Room at Kensington Palace. She was baptized Alexandrina after one of her godparents, Tsar Alexander I of Russia, and Victoria after her mother. Additional names posed by her parents, Georgiana, Charlotte, and Augusta, were dropped on the instructions of the Prince Regent. At birth, Victoria was the fifth in line of succession, after the four eldest sons of George III, George Prince Regent, later George IV, Frederick the Duke of York, William the Duke of Clarence, later William IV, and Victoria's father, Edward Duke of Kent. Prince George had no surviving children, and Frederick had no children. Furthermore, both were estranged from their wives, who were both past childbearing age, so the two eldest brothers were unlikely to have any further legitimate children. William married in 1818. Any of William's legitimate daughters died as infants. The first of these was Princess Charlotte, who was born and died on the 27th of March, 1819, 2 months before Victoria was born. Victoria's father died in January of 1820, when Victoria was less than a year old. A week later, her grandfather died and was succeeded by his eldest son as George IV. Victoria was then third in line to the throne after Frederick and William. She was fourth in line while William's second daughter, Princess Elizabeth, lived from the 10th of December 1820 to the 4th of March 1821. Presumptive. Frederick died in 1827, followed by George IV in 1830. Their next surviving brother succeeded to the throne as William IV, and Victoria became heir presumptive. The Regency Act of 1830 made special provision for Victoria's mother to act as regent in case William died, while Victoria was still a minor. King William distrusted the Duchess's capacity to be regent. In 1836 he declared in her presence he wanted to live until Victoria's 18th birthday, so that a regency could be. Her father was extremely protective, and Victoria was raised largely isolated from other children under the so-called Kensington system, an elaborate set of rules and protocols devised by the Duchess and her ambitious and domineering comptroller, Sir John Conroy, who was rumoured to be the Duchess's lover. The system prevented the princess from meeting people whom her mother and Conroy deemed undesirable, including most of her father's family, and was designed to render her weak and dependent upon them. The Duchess avoided the court because she was scandalized by the presence of King William's illegitimate children. Victoria shared a bedroom with her mother every night, studied with private tutors to regular timetable, and spent her play hours with her dolls and her King Charles spaniel Dash. Her lessons included French, German, Italian, and Latin, but she spoke only English at home. At age 10, she wrote and illustrated a children's story, The Adventures of Alice Lascelles, which was eventually published in 2015. In 1830, the Duchess and Conroy took along the way. Similar journeys to the other parts of England and Wales were taken in 1832, 1833, 1834, and 1835. To the King's annoyance, Victoria was enthusiastically welcomed in each of the stops. William compared the journeys to royal progresses, and was concerned that they portrayed Victoria as his rival rather than his heir presumptive. Victoria disliked the trips. The constant round the public appearances made her tired and ill, and there was little time for her to make rest. She objected on the grounds of the King's disapproval, but her mother dismissed his complaint as motivated by jealousy and forced Victoria to continue the tours. At Ramsgate in October of 1835, Victoria contracted a severe fever, which Conroy initially dismissed as a childhood pretence. While Victoria was ill, Conroy and the Duchess unsuccessfully badgered her to make Conroy her private secretary. As a teenager, Victoria resisted persistent attempts by her mother and Conroy to appoint him to her staff. Once Queen, she banned him from her presence, but he remained in her mother's household. By 1836, Victoria's maternal uncle Leopold to marry her to Prince Albert, the son of his brother Ernest I, Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. Leopold arranged for Victoria's mother to invite her Coburg relatives to visit her in May of 1836, with the purpose of introducing Victoria to Albert. William IV, however, disapproved of any match with the Coburgs, and instead favoured the suit of Prince Alexander of the Netherlands, second son of the Prince of Orange. Victoria was aware of the various matrimonial plans and critically appraised and parade of eligible princes. According to her diary, she enjoyed Albert's company from the beginning. After the visit, she wrote, "Albert is extremely handsome. His hair is about the same colour as mine. His eyes are large and blue, and he has a beautiful nose and a very sweet mouth with fine teeth. But the charm of his countenance is his expression, which is most delightful." Alexander, on the other hand, she describes him as very plain. Victoria wrote to King Leopold, whom she considered her best and kindest adviser, to thank him for the proposal of great happiness you have contributed to give me in the person of dear Albert. He possesses every quality that could be desired to render me perfectly happy. He is so sensible, so kind, and so good, and so amiable too. He has besides the most pleasing and delightful exterior and appearance you can possibly see. However, at 17, Victoria, though interested in Albert, was not yet ready to marry. The parties did not undertake a formal engagement, but assumed that match would take place. Victoria regularly married in mainland Europe. In 1889, during a stay in Biarritz, she became the first reigning monarch from Britain to visit Spain by briefly crossing the border. By April 1900, the Boer War was so unpopular in mainland Europe that her annual trip to France seemed inadvisable. Instead, the Queen went to Ireland for the first time since 1861, in part to acknowledge the contribution of Irish regiments to the South African War. In July of 1900, Victoria's second son, Alfred, or Affy, died. "Oh God, my poor darling Affy, gone too," she wrote in her journal. Affy was one of her favourite children. It's quite heavily documented that she adored Alfred. It is a horrible year, nothing but sadness and horrors of one kind and another. Following a custom she maintained throughout her widowhood, Victoria spent the Christmas of 1900 at Osborne House, on the Isle of Wight. Rheumatism in her legs had rendered her disabled, and her eyesight was clouded by cataracts. Through early January she felt weak and unwell. By mid-January she was drowsy, dazed, confused, and her pet Pomeranian Turry was laid. Eldest son Albert Edward and grandson Wilhelm II. Albert Edward succeeded immediately as Edward VII. In 1897 Victoria had written instructions for her funeral, which was to be military as befitting a soldier's daughter and the head of the army, and white instead of black. On the 25th of January, Edward VII and Wilhelm II, together with Prince Arthur, helped lift her body into the coffin. She was dressed in a white dress and her wedding veil. An array of mementos commemorating her extended family, friends, and servants were laid in the coffin with her. At her request, by her physicians and dressers, one of Albert's dressing gowns was placed by her side, with a plaster cast of his hand, while a lock of John Brown's hair, along with a picture of him, was placed in her left hand, concealed from the view of the family by a carefully positioned bunch of flowers. Items of jewellery placed on Victoria included the wedding ring of Brown's mother, which Brown gave Victoria in 1883. Her funeral took place on Saturday the 2nd of February in St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. Following 2 days of lying in state, she was interred beside Prince Albert in the Royal Mausoleum, Frogmore, within Home Park, Windsor. With a reign of 63 years, 7 months and 2 days, Victoria was the longest reigning British monarch and the longest reigning queen regnant. There's a difference between regent and regnant. Now, a regnant is a reigning queen, so a queen in her own right, like Elizabeth II. She inherited the throne, she did not marry into the throne. She is a queen regnant who is the acting reigning monarch. That's why a queen regnant's husband is prince consort and not king consort, because king is seen as a higher level to queen, so by there being a king consort, it would undermine the queen. Therefore, it's prince consort, and when a king marries a lady, she is queen consort. Anyway, a regent is different because a regent has married a king, or that can also, however, not all regents are married to a king. That is a queen's consort, who is a queen who marries a king. But basically, a queen regent, is essentially a standing-in queen. So, say Queen Victoria, right? Was say Queen Victoria, say George IV died when Queen Victoria was only 5 years old, right? She wouldn't be able to inherit the throne at 5 years old. That's too young. So her mother, also called Victoria, would become Queen Victoria until her daughter was 18, and then she'd step back off the throne, and Victoria would then be the reigning monarch. But she wouldn't be classed as Queen of England. She'd be classed as Queen Regent of England. So yeah, hope that clears it up. Longest reigning Queen Regent in Queen Regnant in world history until her great-great-granddaughter Elizabeth II surpassed her on the 9th of September 2015. She was the last monarch of Britain from the House of Hanover. Her son Edward VII belonged to her husband's house of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, because Queen Victoria was the House of Hanover, and usually the children take the house of their father. So instead of Edward VII being from the House of Hanover, he was from the house of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. It's like Queen Elizabeth II. When Queen Elizabeth II married Prince Philip, ideally Charles III he was basically House of Windsor, right? His mother, Elizabeth II, House of Windsor. His father was the House of Mountbatten. Realistically, Charles III should recognise himself as being a member of the House of Mountbatten, or Battenberg, as it was called back then. But he's not. He classes himself as a member of the House of Windsor. It was changed in, I believe, the early 1900s because Saxe-Coburg and Gotha sounded, or it was during World War II when the Nazis were a thing, because Saxe-Coburg and Gotha sounded too German, so they wanted to change. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.